Welcome to part two. I always mess this up. Welcome to the interview portion of the Spurs Up Show. We have a great guest today in Perry Orth. We're going to be recapping the season. Perry, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, my friend. Appreciate you having me on and talking Gamecock football after the regular season of the 2018 season.
Well, let's go ahead and get this thing rolling. Perry, what were you going into this season? I know a lot of people had really high expectations, but what were your overall expectations for this year for South Carolina's football team, and did the team meet them?
Yeah, I preseason expectations are something I try to stay away from. I just wanted to see progression, and I think we saw that. Obviously the injuries on defense is never anything you want to see like that, but offensively, I'm obviously a quarterback or former quarterback, and you wanted to see the offense get better and improve, and you wanted to see Jake Bentley continue to take the next step in his career, and you saw that. And for me, that was huge. I think that I'll agree with Coach Muschamp. This is his best team since he's been at South Carolina. Just didn't have the best record. I think we played a really difficult schedule. I think last season our schedule or our record was a little bit skewed because of our strength of schedule was really weak compared to most years playing in the SEC. But, we had the expectations of giving Georgia a little bit better of a game, didn't realize how talented and how just special that team was. And then, there were a few games here and there that we kind of let slip away. But, you look all in all, and there's progression in our program. And as a fan, yeah, you want to win and you want to do all this, that, and the other. But you got to look at the long-term plan and the direction of our program. You look at what Dabo's been able to do at Clemson. He didn't do it in 2 years. It took some time. It took him about 5 years. It took Spurrier about 5 years. And sometimes it's really what it takes to you get your program implemented, your players in, your staff, the way you want things done. So I like the direction we're heading in.
Well, obviously, I agree with a lot of what you said there. I think the program is going in the right direction. And I think that last year, too, a lot of people got the sense that we were closer to a 3-year rebuild, really, and it was really, really closer to a 5, in all honesty. And I agree with a lot of what you said about we won a lot of one-score games last year, and we were on the defeated side on some of those this year. You look at Florida, and you have a big lead like that at Florida, which has never really happened at the South Carolina, it seems like, and you blow that. But anyways, keeping it offensively, when you look at Jake Bentley and what he did last year, everybody, he was supposed to be a freshman last year. He graduated early, but overall, what were your expectations, and what were some things you were looking for him to do this season, and did he hit what you were looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. He, I think the beginning of the season, we were really expecting him to come out and make this big jump and transition, and with a new offensive coordinator and getting into a similar scheme, but a little bit different. There were a few bumps along the way, and obviously Kentucky and Georgia are two elite defenses. And he actually had a pretty good game against Georgia. Obviously, the Kentucky game wasn't his best of his career, but you saw he bounced back in a big way, and he kind of used what happened with Michael against Missouri as motivation for the back half of the season. And he played about as good a football as anybody else in college football. So for him to take that next step as a leader and as a quarterback, going into next year is a huge year. I think that, year 1, 2, and 3, you can kind of buy yourself some time as a program and as a staff. Year 4, you really need to see the next phase and the next step, the next growth. You want to see them win that big game. We hadn't really done that yet. I know that people complain about Coach Muschamp's record versus some of the higher, the ranked opponents. And next year we're going to have plenty of opportunities to play really good teams and ranked teams, both at home and on the road. So you'd like to see us knock at least one of those upper echelon teams off to really show that, yeah, we haven't made it quite to the playoff level, but we're capable of competing and winning big games.
I definitely think you make a lot of good points, especially about next year's schedule with playing three of the top 5 teams in the country are slated for us to play next year. 2 of them being at home with Alabama and Clemson, and obviously going on the road to face Georgia. But something you hit on real quick that I don't think a lot of fans talk about a lot is that how Michael Scarnecchia came in and beat Missouri, and I think that made Jake Bentley see I don't want to say shadows, but I feel like his job was in jeopardy for the first time since he really came on and took over for you and what was the kid's name? Brandon McElwain took over for you guys in 2016. But what do you think that competition did for him? And did you agree with keeping Jake Bentley in over Marcus Scarnecchia, not even giving Scarnecchia really a chance to keep his starting position after the Missouri game?
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting move. I mean, obviously it paid off. I thought that after a game like that, because previously Jake wasn't playing that well up until that point. I know that he was dealing with a lot of drops and things like that, but having watched Michael throw the ball the way he did, I think a lot of us would have liked to see him just maybe play another half or ever play again. But yeah, that Coach, what I did like about it, and I will say this, and I appreciate Coach for doing this, was that he stuck. He said Jake is our quarterback. Michael did a great job coming in, doing his thing, and helping our team win. But Jake is our quarterback. We're going to stick by him. We're going to ride with him until further notice. And he rode with him literally up until the last point, and Jake started playing really good football, and I think that motivated him. I think it's unfortunate on Michael's end that he never really got another chance to play. He got one opportunity and actually had the best win of the season versus a now finishing ranked Missouri team. So, it's a little frustrating for Michael, but, as somebody out besides Michael and his family, you look at it and you say, maybe that wasn't the worst decision possible. But, yeah, that was a hard decision that he had to make, and he stuck with him. And, that was his decision, and he felt like that was the best decision for the team. So it ended up paying, because Jake played really well versus Ole Miss and Tennessee and some of those teams to help us kind of get back on the right track.
Well, you would talk about how the motivation helped him, and especially I think it did against Clemson. I would have never expected his performance in a million years. But what did you overall think about how well he played against Clemson? I mean, 510 yards, 500 receptions. I mean, the one bad pass the entire game he had was picked off. But overall, what did you think about his performance, and would you have ever expected that going into that game?
I mean, no, I don't think you ever expect 510 yards passing and 5 touchdowns versus the number one scoring defense in the country. Now, Jake obviously has just unbelievable talents and abilities. So you look at him as an athlete standpoint, yeah, you think he's capable of doing that. Did I think that was going to happen? No, I think they had an outstanding plan to attack Clemson vertically down the field. I think that Clemson's secondary is very, very average, and we have a lot of talented receivers that made a lot of big plays, and Jake stood in the pocket, threw the ball well, and they protected. So anytime you have that, you're going to have a recipe for success. But, you hit 2 or 3 50, 60-yard plays on 3 passes, and then you go out there and you play a good ball game. Yeah, you're gonna rack up some yards pretty quickly, and he did that. That was one of the best quarterback performances that I've ever seen in a game, especially against a high caliber defense that Clemson is.
Well, and I think the offense line has a lot to do with that. And they were very good in pass protection this season, especially Zach Bailey. Unfortunately, he broke his leg against Akron. And you had Dylan Wanham, who I watched a lot of that game and saw him go against Cleveland Farrell and Xavier Thomas, 2 very good defense players for Clemson. And he pretty much, relatively shut them down that entire game. And that was extremely promising for me to see. I think he's probably going to make the move to left tackle next season. I don't know what your opinion is on that. But switching from really the players to the coaches, when you look at going into the season, a lot of people said because of Brian McClendon and what the offense did against Michigan, they had really high expectations for going into this year. What was something you saw in the difference between last year's offense and this year's offense? Like, yeah, that's Brian's offense now, and not, it's not the old Will Muschamp. People always drag on those offenses that weren't that good. What do you think about Brian McClendon and the job he's done on the offense for this season?
Yeah, I think that what we were really struggling with up until the Missouri game, going after the Kentucky game, I remember sitting around and going on 107.5, the game here in Columbia, talking, man, we just had no identity as an offense. Were we going to be a run team? Were we going to be a pass team? And we kind of found that we were actually a really balanced team. We found that we were able to run the ball effectively because our offensive line play was exceptional. But then we also found that we were able to push the ball down the field because we could protect the the passer. And anytime you can give a quarterback time to throw, especially with the receivers that we have, you're looking at a very high outcome of success offensively. And then we started finally catching the freaking football, which helps the quarterback and the offense incredibly. So we found an identity, and guys started making plays. And as an offense, that needs to happen if you want to have any success.
No, I definitely think you're on some stuff there. I think that I don't know if the offense should identify at least going into next season with like Mike Leach at Washington State and throw the ball 50 times a game. But I think Bentley proved that he could do that against Clemson and against a team like Ole Miss when the defenses really aren't playing that well. But I think he's the kind of guy who next year, I don't know what his stock would exactly be going in the draft this year, but I think next year, he throws for 4,000 yards or so, maybe 30 something touchdowns. He's a guy that you could look at as a top round first or second round pick. And I don't think a lot of people expected that coming into last season, especially halfway through the season when he was playing so poorly.
Yeah, I hate to be a naysayer, but I think 4,030 touchdowns may be pushing it for what the kind of brand of offense that we play. But I do believe that he could definitely throw for over 3,000 again in 20 plus touchdowns. I think that he has that capability. I don't project us being a throw it 40, 50 times a game team next season. I think that what you saw against Clemson is we had no other option to we weren't going to be able to run the ball successfully versus that front. So we were going to ride or die by the throw. And we were hitting big plays left and right. And I just don't know if you see that kind of offensive outcome week in, week out. I mean, we might. I don't know. I may sound negative by saying that, but that was kind of a performance where I thought that was a little bit uncommon, where we caught their guys in some out of position spots. But do I think that Jay can throw for over 3,000 again and 25 plus touchdowns? There's no question, especially with the guys we have coming back at receiver and the progression of which I think we're going to do, working into year 2 for Brian McClendon and his offense.
Well, you talk about receivers, and recently Deebo Samuel came out saying that he wasn't going to play in the bowl game. I don't have a problem with it. He's been a great player for 4 years. I don't think anyone should have a problem with it. I don't really think there's much he could have done against Virginia in the Belk Bowl to add to his draft profile right now. But overall, what's your opinion on it? Just give us your take really quick.
Yeah, I think some of the hardcore Gamecock fans will say, "Oh, play with your team," but here's the deal. Kid's left it on, he's left it all out on the field. He's battled injuries throughout his career. And then I think after seeing what happened with Zach breaking his foot in the second half of the game or breaking his ankle, he's just like, well, what left do I have to prove? I think that, selfishly he has nothing left. Obviously you want to win with your team, but you're playing in the Belk Bowl. Okay. You win this game. It's a great win, kind of push you in the offseason. You lose. It's not the best, but at the same time, no one's, I don't think the Belk Bowl is going to turn our team into a national championship contender, So having said that, I think Deebo made the best decision for him and his family and for, he's going to have the opportunity to make generation changing money here at the next level if he does it correctly. So I think he made the right decision. I have absolutely zero concern with it. I actually supported it. When I saw it, I was actually wondering if he was going to play because it didn't make any sense for him to do that, especially knowing his track record with injuries and having been relatively injury-free this season.
Well, no, I definitely think you're right there, and I think that one big thing that probably scared him to going maybe I should say how this game was Zach Bailey breaking his leg in basically a meaningless game against Akron. But switching to another receiver on the offense, and I don't know if you saw this or not, but some reporter asked Brian Edwards if he was thinking about sitting out the bowl game or if he had considered going to the NFL, and he gave kind of not that I wouldn't say the greatest responses, but I wouldn't necessarily agree with the way he responded. I think he said to the going to the NFL party, he hadn't considered it, and then the bowl game, they both just basically tried to brush off the question. It was him and Deebo Samuel that were asked. But what do you think about Brian Edwards' future? Do you think he's a Gamecock next year? Do you think he leaves for the NFL? And do you think he should leave for the NFL?
No, I think Brian, I know he's considering it of leaving. I just hope that he is having the proper mentorship and proper guidance in this process. Brian's an unbelievable talent. I think receiver-wise, he probably projects better to the NFL than Deebo does. And I hope somebody's telling Brian that he had an unbelievable season as far as catches and made some incredible plays, but he also had a ton of drops. And you hate to be that kind of person and that bring that negativity, but you sit him down and say, listen, you clean up the drops. You go out and you are going to be our number one receiver next year on a team that's probably going to lean more towards throwing the football. And you could have a 1,000-yard, 12 touchdown season and be a first round pick. 6'3", 215, runs a sub 4.5, can jump out the gym and can catch the football. Regardless of his drops, he does have great hands. So you look at something like that and you say, listen, do you want to be a third, fourth, fifth round pick, or do you want to be a first or second round guy? So it really just depends on who is giving him the proper guidance. So hopefully people like, Coach BMAC and Coach Muschamp and Jake and Marcus Lattimore. I think this is a position where Marcus needs to step in and be that kind of that guidance counselor and say, listen, I'm just going to be real with you. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I think you should do. Instead of, somebody either back home or a friend of his saying, nah, man, you're good. You go and make a ton of money. Well, wait 1 year and then go and make a ton of money.
I think there's a big difference between him leaving this year and maybe being a top 4 round pick comparing to, like you said, catching for 1,000 yards next year and maybe 12, maybe 10 plus touchdowns in a very good offense. Because I think that another year of him playing 12 games, because to my memory, I don't think he's missed a game in a South Carolina uniform, but playing those extra 12 games, showing that the drops he had last year aren't going to repeat into his future, and doing some other big things offensively, I think that shows that he can be a number one receiver in the NFL, because there's a huge difference between a first round or second round draft pick in the NFL and the fifth round draft pick, which I think
there's no question.
Which I think that would be a huge difference. Regardless, it would be a huge difference money wise, but in his role as a team and coming in, that's the difference between playing special teams for your first couple of years, being a starting receiver on an NFL team, which there aren't many of those to ever do that. But switching from the current team, we're going to go with some older stories. I know you played for Coach Spurrier. He was one of the guys who, recruited you to come to South Carolina. What was one thing that Spurrier always did that maybe, you always loved, that something, or maybe just a story in general, is something that he did that, you made you glad to be a Gamecock?
Whew, well, there are a lot of things that would rub you the wrong way. I like playing for Coach Spurrier because he held you to a higher standard. He didn't care if you were a walk-on or a five-star. He wanted you to play and play at a high level, and there was no exception in between. He was just a funny guy to be around. It was always funny when he'd rip on the other guys, but when it was you, it was terrible. But the other guys, it was funny. And, he was great for our program. I think bringing a big name in like that, he knew how to fundraise and get people fired up about football. He knew how to get the people pouring money in to build the brand new facilities that we have now. And he was just, honestly, he really changed the face of South Carolina football from being, just an average contender to being, South Carolina. I mean, when I was coming up in high school, in middle school, South Carolina I saw South Carolina kind of like I saw a Missouri or a Kentucky or an Ole Miss, Mississippi State, one of those like mid SEC average teams. And then once I got to high school and was watching Garcia and then Connor and people like that kind of take the program to the next level, you saw South Carolina and the likes of Georgia and the Floridas and the Tennessees and the Auburns and Alabamas. So the perception of South Carolina football has changed because of him. So, he left at a bad time, and it was kind of a weird deal the way it all went down, but he did a lot more good than bad for South Carolina football.
No, I definitely agree. I think that South Carolina was basically, I wouldn't say irrelevant, but we had a good year here or there. And other than that, we really weren't having much consistency as a program. And I think Spurrier really changed that, and Muschamp's doing a great job. Obviously, through 3 years, has been the winningest coach in South Carolina history, which is super impressive to me and should be to everybody else. But obviously, you got to play for Spurrier and through a year of Muschamp. But compare their coaching styles, and what's something they did different, something maybe they did the same.
Yeah, so when it came to the X's and O's of Coach Spurrier's offense, the attention to detail was like nothing I've ever been a part of or seen. I mean, you literally down to the foot of your split, whether you were going to be on top of the numbers or a yard inside the numbers or a yard on top of the numbers, or being on the hash versus being a yard off. I mean, it was literally down to the yardage of every route, of every formation, the way you motioned. Everything was so specific, and he was just a perfectionist when it came to offense. But the other stuff around the program is he was a little bit more lenient, obviously, than Coach Muschamp was. Coach Muschamp was like that all the way around, from what you wore to work out, what time we obviously everybody needed to be on time, but kind of when you needed to go to study hall, everything was just planned out for you and just really, really detail oriented all across the board. Whereas Coach Spurrier was more of that way when it came to X's and O's, but not what you wore to meetings, not really that kind of the stuff, which in my opinion, I agree with. I think some of the other stuff is a little bit over the top, but then again, that just kind of gets your mind right and gets you in a frame of reference when it comes to doing things around this program, whether it is wearing, the same socks when you work out or the same socks when you go to practice, or you're not doing something individually, you're doing everything as a team. I think it builds that camaraderie and builds that team effort and teamwork. But yeah, they were too, to Coach Muschamp, obviously a little bit more strict. He was more the strict parent on the field. Coach Spurrier was a little bit more lenient in some ways than others, but both two really, really interesting guys to play for. Really enjoyed getting to know both of them, and it was definitely a pleasure to play for both of them.
Well, obviously, I think Spurrier is the winningest coach in South Carolina history, and I think if Muschamp stays here for 8 or 9 or 10 years, maybe if that happens, that he could end up one day passing him. I think that's the direction the program is going right now. But shifting back to the future of the Gamecock football, obviously Ryan Helinski is looked at as what some would say, that I don't want to say the savior of Gamecock football, but a guy who's going to come in and people have really high expectations for him. From a film standpoint, what have you seen from him that's made you say, okay, this guy's going to be for real?
Yeah, I think Ryan brings a lot to the table as far as composure and pocket presence, and he has a good arm. One thing I'm just very, very cautious to judge freshman quarterbacks is how are they going to, two things. How are they going to handle the speed of the game? How are they, learning the new offense, the ins and outs of the game? How are they going to just get used to being around other top flight athletes? And then number two is how are they going to adjust to criticism? Right now you look at a kid who's a big time recruit, like you said, the savior of Gamecock football. When I was coming up, they said the same things about, every kid. I mean, Lorenzo Nunez, Connor Mitch, Brandon McElwain. I mean, every high ranked quarterback that has come in has been the quote unquote savior of Gamecock football. So, how are they going to adjust to negativity when they go out and play in a game? How are they going to adjust with, if they play bad, fans booing them or telling them things that they don't want to hear and telling them that they suck and they want the backup in? And how are they going to handle that? And that's something you never really know until they're thrown into the fire. So I think that Ryan's had to deal with a lot of adversity in his life, and he's seemed to have handled it really well. So that's a good sign. But that's something you never really know till they're out there. And that's the tricky part about it.
Well, I definitely think at least from an outsider looking in, because I don't really, I mean, we know Ryan, he's been on the show before, and he seems like a really good kid, but I would just think the way he prepares himself for everything, it seems like, and what he's been through, I think is going to prepare him at a really good level to come in and play at South Carolina. Because obviously, like you said, he's going to be under a lot of pressure to perform more early. And I think one of the biggest things for him is he's going to be able to sit behind Jake Bentley for a year and just learn from him and learn about the game. And I think that's something that maybe Jake didn't have, and other quarterbacks that have come through South Carolina didn't get the chance to have.
Didn't get a chance to have like somebody to kind of like take the year and sit and mentor?
Yeah, just sit and learn for a year, basically. I mean, obviously, you got to sit behind. I don't know if you were there for Connor Shaw, but at least you got to sit there from Dylan Thompson and learn from a guy like that who had been through South Carolina, had been at South Carolina for a long time, and was obviously a really good quarterback.
Yeah, no, yeah, he was a big mentor in my life, and I'd like to say that my last year that I helped Jake a little bit as far as kind of learning how to handle not only the football side of things, but the life side, and that's what I'd expect Jake to be able to do the same for Ryan.
No, I mean, I definitely would agree that you were. I mean, obviously, you were a walk-on. I mean, you did what you could do with the stuff you had at South Carolina. Is basically what I'm trying. I mean, obviously, I think that Brandon coming in, you were a great mentor to him, and then obviously with Jake taking over halfway through the year. I mean, I don't really. I mean, it was hard to do what you did for a walk on. I think the expectations for you were with those. I don't know how I'm trying to say this. For what
Oh,
you
no.
did is pretty great to me from outside looking at. I mean, you were, I won't say Connor Mitch basically got the job over you, and then you came in for him and you performed well. And I think a lot of people are proud. Especially the win against Vanderbilt. I think was probably one of the best things I've ever seen in my life, at least.
Yeah, no, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, as far as coming in and having those high expectations as a recruit, yeah, that's something that Jake would definitely be able to help him with. I think that when you get there, you kind of all that stuff kind of fades away because once you get into that locker room, nobody cares what you are ranked. Nobody cares what kind of expectations the fans or social media had about you because the players are going to be able to tell really quickly after a first few practices, is this kid worth a crap or is he not? And that's what it was for some of these other guys, is that this kid, not quarterback wise, just some of the other kids that were brought in that were high recruits. Well, this kid's top flight receiver and he can't catch a cold, or this running back's slow, man. How is this kid a 4-star recruit? So um, the players will help with that. But once you get in there and you're in school, all that hype and all that stuff, it just kind of fades away because guess what? In 6 months, people are going to be fired up, obviously, about Helinski playing, but they're going to be talking about that Luke Doty kid. And then the next year, they're going to be talking about the next recruit. So just being able to block that out once you get on campus, enjoy it while you can. I mean, people were just drooling when Kerryon Joyner committed to
Yeah.
South Carolina. And look how quickly it changed when Ryan Helinski committed. And then next thing you know, the next guys can, so realizing that you're just another hamster on the wheel is the sooner you realize that, the better.
Well, I think one big saying that I've always agreed with is that stars don't matter once the pads come on. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody cares about how many stars you had on you when you're getting your stuff handed to you every week of practice. But overall, man, great interview. We really appreciate you coming on. It's always great to have a former Gamecock on the podcast. Hopefully you're doing pretty well.
I appreciate it, man, and thanks for having me on. And like what you guys are doing, and look forward to watching a Gamecock win at the end of December.
Yep, go Gamecocks. Thanks for coming on, Perry.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it, man.